Welcome back, boys and girls. In this video, we are going to send a friend request. So we're going to be using AJAX to send a friend request, and this can only be done by visiting another user's profile. So if you go to their profile, there's a little button that says send friend request. That's going to initiate an AJAX request to then send them a friend request. Let's actually review the last time we used an AJAX request, because I know a lot of this stuff is pretty new. So as a reminder, AJAX can be used to send asynchronous requests without refreshing the page. So I'm going to go into account and go into edit account.html and scroll down to the bottom. If you recall from when we did the image cropping, we built this AJAX request that actually submitted a post request to our crop image function. So remember, in views.py, in the account views.py, we have this crop image function which has its own URL, right here. And we're using AJAX in edit account.html to execute that. We're doing it all right here. So we want to do the same kind of thing for sending a friend request. So if we go to like our development environment, for example, and I search for Florian, there's Florian registered on my development environment. When I click on send friend request right here, this should initiate the AJAX request to send a friend request to him, to create a friend request object. All right, let's do it. Let's close all this stuff first of all, because this is for the account stuff. Let's go into the friend app, go into views.py, and inside of views.py, we're going to build the function for sending a friend request. We're going to build that AJAX function, build the function that the AJAX request is going to call upon, I guess is a better terminology. So from Django.http, we want to get HTTP response. This is so we can send a payload back to the template. We want to get JSON because, of course, we can only send strings back and forth as payloads to the templates through AJAX. So we always have to encode it into JSON. Well, JSON or some other kind of format like it. So from account.model, import account, and then from friend.models, models, it should be, this one should be models also, import friend request. This function is going to be called send friend request. Pretty self-explanatory. It's going to take a request, arguments, and keyword arguments, even though I don't believe we need the keyword arguments or the arguments. So you can leave these out if you want. It's up to you. I'm just going to leave them in for no apparent reason. Now, user equals request.user to get the authenticated user. Payload will equal an empty Python dictionary. Now, if the request.method equals a post request and user is authenticated, so authenticated. Now I want to get the user ID of the user who's going to be receiving the friend request. So I want to do user ID equals request.post.get and do receiver user ID. That's going to be a variable that we send through the payload from AJAX. Now, if that does exist, we can carry on. We want to make sure that didn't get forgotten in the payload, so we want to do a little if block here. Now, the receiver is going to be the user who has that user ID. So account.objects.get pk equals that user ID. Let's make sure I imported account. Looks like I forgot the capital up here, so let's make sure to get that. So receiver equals account objects, get the user with that primary key that was submitted through the payload. Now I want to do a try catch, or a try accept, sorry. Used to Android, where it's called a try catch. Now I want to get any friend requests active and not active. So both active and non-active friend requests. So friend requests equals friend request .objects.filter, and this is going to return a query set. Remember that filter returns a query set. It returns like a kind of a Python list, I guess you would call it. It's not a list, it's a query set, but it's kind of similar to a list. And then get will return a single entry. So we're getting a list of potential results here, where the sender equals user and the receiver equals that receiver. Again, I have to wrap the text every single video. I always have to type word wrap. I don't know why my settings don't save. I think it's like on a per file basis, so it only gets set per file. Anyway, I'll figure out what's going on with that one day. Now I want to find if any of them are active. So find if any of them are active. So I'm going to get all of the friend requests by this user, if I sent any friend requests where the receiver was this, and I want to check to make sure if they were active. So again, I'm going to do a try accept and say for request in friend requests, if the friend request is active, so is active, then I want to raise an exception. I want to say raise exception. You already sent them a friend request. So you already sent them a friend request. So if somehow they get through the template logic is wrong and they try to send them a request, but there already is an active one, then we want to raise this exception. If we get through this loop with no exception, then we know that there are no active friend requests and we can create a new one. So if none are active, then create a new friend request. So friend request equals friend request, and we want to create one where the sender equals the authenticated user and the receiver equals whoever was passed through the payload. And I want to do friend request dot save. So that will commit it to the database, creating that new friend request. Now I want to send a payload back to the view. The response will be friend request sent, just so we have something to kind of tell the user. Now I want to do exception as E, and if there is an exception, I can return like an error response to the UI. So I can say string and return that exception. This other try except right here, that's for if the friend request object does not exist, so you can't find it. So in that case, it would be friend request dot does not exist. That means there are no friend requests. That means this user has never sent a friend request. So there are no friend requests. So create one. Because this first kind of part here was if there are friend requests, check to make sure that there isn't an active one with that user already. If there isn't, then create one. But if we already know if we can't find one, then that's pretty much already satisfied what we were trying to confirm anyway. So in that case, we would just do friend request equals friend request, where the sender equals the user and the receiver equals the receiver. And then just kind of the same thing. We would send a payload back telling them that that was actually created. So friend request.save, and I can copy this saying friend request sent. And then one last check kind of down here. I want to say if the payload response equals none. In that case, there's something weird happened, and I would just say, something went wrong. Something went wrong. We don't know what, but we do want to tell the UI that there was something that happened. Now up here, we have if there is not a user ID, so we're going to check that case. Otherwise, that case, I'm going to copy this again. So payload response. In that case, we don't want to say something went wrong, probably more like unable to send a friend request. Let's say that. Now the last else statement, I think up here. So if it's a post request and the user is authenticated, so we want to do an else statement for that. So do else and copy the payload again. We want to make sure to tell the user always like what's going on. We always want to let them know kind of what happened, or at least give some information. And I want to say you must be authenticated to send a friend request. Even though theoretically these conditions should never happen, like there's no way that the user should even see the send friend request button if they're not authenticated, but still, random stuff happens. Weirder things have happened. So it's always good to kind of just handle all scenarios. Now we want to return the HTTP response. So JSON.dumps and dump the payload to convert it to JSON, and then do content type equals application/JSON. So that's going to be our AJAX request for sending a friend request. So just like the other kind of AJAX request that we created, we need a URL for that. So let's go into the Friends app and right click and create a new file named urls.py. And I want to say from Django.urls, import path, and from friend.views, import that new request kind of view that we just built. So that send friend request function. I can add a comma there. Now I want to set the app name. You always have to set the app name. Remember, I told you that when we built the account URLs file, we always have to set the app name if we're going to kind of extend the base URLs file. Now URL patterns, we can set it equal to square bracket and just do one for now. So friend request. So friend request is going to be the URL name with a trailing slash. And then we want to send that, or use that send friend request kind of view or kind of function, whatever you want to call it. And now this name will be friend request. So that's the URL shortcut. And then you can add a comma there just so you don't forget when we later build more requests. Now, since we just created a brand new urls.py file, I'm going to save that. And we need to go into our project urls.py file, and we need to include that. So we're going to keep this in alphabetical order, and F comes after A but before L. So I'm going to copy this account path stuff, put it here, and do friend, and I want to do include friend.urls where the namespace is then friend. So the same kind of thing when we built that extension or that urls.py file in the account app, because we built one in the friend app now. So we're doing the same kind of thing. We're following the same pattern. The difference is obviously the URL, we're referencing a different file, and the namespace is friend instead of account. So it's going to know how to find this file so that we can access this URL that we just built. Now we're going to create an HTML file to execute this AJAX request. So let's minimize this just to kind of clean things up a little bit. And let's go into the friend app and create a new folder called templates, because that's what we always do when we're going to add some HTML templates. Then inside there, I'm going to create another new folder called friend, because it's inside the friend app. And then inside there, I'm going to create another new folder called snippets. And inside of snippets, I'm going to create a file finally. So we have templates, friend, snippets. So right click, go to new file, press Control S. And this file is going to be called send friend request.html. So this send friend request.html file is going to just contain the code to send the AJAX request, and then we're going to include that inside of account.html. So let's open up a script tag and let's build that AJAX request. So function, I'll call it send friend request. Send friend request. It's going to take the ID of the user who you're sending the friend request to, and it's going to take a function called UI update function. So this is a function that we're going to have to invoke after like a successful or a failure to send the friend request. So let's define a payload. So we're going to create a JSON object. We need to do a CSRF middleware token, because we're going to be doing a post request. And if you recall from when we built the previous AJAX request, we always need to include a CSRF token if we're sending a post request on a Django based website. It's a security feature. Now the receiver user ID is the ID that we're interested in right here. So remember back in the view here, that's what we're getting for the person who's receiving the friend request. So that's this parameter here. Now we're ready to do the AJAX. So $.AJAX, open this up, squiggly braces. Now we want to do type, it's a post request. The next parameter is going to be the data type, that's going to be JSON. The next parameter is URL, so this is the Django URL that we're executing. Whoops, I typed that wrong. This should be percentage signs. Then URL, single quotations. We want to access that URL that we just created. So it's inside the friend app and it's called friend-request, and it doesn't have any parameters. So if you look at this, notice there's nothing in like between the carets, there's no variables, there's nothing like that. So we just need to call it, all the information is going to be passed through the payload that we need. So comma, go to the next field. Next one's going to be timeout. I'm going to set a limit of 5 seconds or 5,000 milliseconds. The data is going to be that payload. And then we have a success, we're going to have an error, and we're going to have a complete case. So success, the function, then do comma and do error, again, function, data, open this up, and then do comma and then do complete. Function, data, and open this up. So if it's successful, there's a couple things we can check for. So inside of the view, if it's successful, we have a couple of different responses. Friend request sent would be one of them. An exception could be one of them. Basically everything inside of this response. So we want to look for this keyword response. That's how we know that it was successful basically. So let's go into the success case. I can do console.log. If you're interested to like debug or anything like that, you could do success and like print the data. I'm going to comment this out because I don't really care, but if you're having problems, that's a good way to debug it. So now I want to say if the data, you can either do data.response or you could do data response. At least I think so. I'm pretty sure you could do data.response. I think that will do the same thing. Just like in account, if we look at our crop image, case down here, when we sent result here, if we look at edit account.html and we go down to the AJAX, we could check for data.result. So it's the same kind of thing. We could either do data.response or do data.response and look for the keyword. Either way is fine, whichever you like. So we want to look for if friend request sent. So this has to match exactly what we have in the view here. So friend request sent with a period. Make sure that these are both the same, by the way. You probably should have defined that as a constant. That would have been smart, but I'm not smart. I did not. So I'm just checking for like a specific string. So in this case, if you wanted to do something on success, you could say like, update UI. We're going to be handling that in edit account.html. So don't worry about, for us, we're not going to do anything here. And then I can say else if the response data, so let me get this response data. If this response data does not equal null, then we have probably some kind of exception that was thrown. So I could do data.response. So if we look in views.py, like if it's not friend request sent, which would basically be like the success case, another way you could do this, just to kind of clear it up, like you could do result and do like success. Otherwise, whoops, I forgot a C there. And then if there's ever like an error, you could do like, error. And then inside of here, you could check for that, just like we did with the other one. Like you could do if, data dot success or result equals success, and then else if data.result equals error. That's probably a better way to do it, but I'm just kind of doing it quick and dirty. So I don't really care. I know this is going to work, so I'm not going to use result. Basically, if it isn't friend request sent, then I know I have some kind of an error. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm saying if it's not friend request sent, then this is not null, then I want to show that to the user. Otherwise, if there's like some kind of unknown error, I could just do alert and something went wrong. So in this case, if there's an error, something goes wrong, we could do that. Alternatively, you could also print out the specific error and do like just data. So if I did that, that would print out the specific error. On complete, then we want to call that UI update function, and I need to invoke it. So in JavaScript, you can actually pass functions as variables and then invoke them inside of the function itself. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm going to pass a function that I want to execute once the send friend request kind of request has been completed. So that's why it's executing in on complete. So that's our send friend request.html. So now we want to go into account.html, go to the very bottom and comment out this, or comment in send friend request.html. And this is also wrong. This should be friend / snippets send friend request.html. So that is the file that we just created up here. That's this file right here. So saving that, and we want to update one of these JavaScript functions also. So now that I've included this snippet, it's basically like if I took this, copied it, and I put it down here. That's basically what I just did with this include statement. So it just keeps it cleaner. So instead of pasting it in there, just like all of these, I can just write include, and then I have access to that function, send friend request. So now up here inside of the button for sending friend request, I can just call send friend request. I can pass the ID of the profile that I'm currently looking at. And then here's the function that I want to call. This is the UI update function. So here, UI update function, that's what I'm passing here on friend request sent. If you go up, you can see that function is right here. And all I'm doing is I'm reloading the page. So once a friend request has been, or once the request has been made and complete is called, the UI update function will be invoked, and then therefore the page will get reloaded. This is the easiest way to handle this. If you look at like the production environment, if you were to, send a friend request to somebody, let me just search a user and click on one of these. If I send a friend request, you obviously could just update the view without refreshing it, but the easiest way here is just to refresh it. So if I click this, the page gets refreshed and it loads the new logic. That is definitely the easiest way to do that. It might not look the best, but it's definitely the easiest. So at this point, we should be ready to test. So I'm going to press Control S, go to my development environment, and let's see, it looks like we got an error. So we get a crash. Let's take a look at the log here. So if payload response equals none, line 35 in views.py. So let's go to line 35, and this should be a double equal sign. So pressing Control S on that, let's go back to our development environment, refresh it, and there we go. Here we have Florian, my good friend, who actually I haven't sent a friend request to yet. So here we are looking at his profile. Now let's click send friend request. Boom, there we go. I sent him a friend request. Notice the view is updated. And no matter how many times I refresh this, I can see that that friend request is still valid. Now we can also check this in the admin. So if I go to admin and I go to friend requests, notice there it is. a friend request from Mitch to Florian. So if I click on this, it's active, it's from me, it's to Florian. So it looks like everything at this point is working. The other thing that I could test is if I was to actually log out and log in with Florian. So I'm going to log in with Florian. Now I'm going to go to my own profile. Notice this hasn't changed, or sorry, it has changed, because now I can see that I have a friend request. Now if I click on this, it doesn't do anything because we haven't built that URL yet. But if I go to, if I search for Mitch's profile, I go to Mitch, notice there we go, this has changed. So it says accept friend request because I currently have one pending from him. So that's kind of all that we can test as of right now. In the next video, what we're going to do, if I go back, is build a page for showing all of the friend requests. So if I click this, it'll take me to a page that shows a list of all of my pending friend requests. Oh, didn't see you there. Hey, I noticed that you were watching the course on YouTube. And I was wondering if you knew that if you go to codingwithmitch.com, it's way better, because on codingwithmitch.com, it tracks your progress and it gives you all of the source code links and any other resources that you need for that specific lecture. I don't know if you knew, because I noticed you were watching it on YouTube, so I thought I would just let you know. So go to codingwithmitch.com. Don't waste any more time. Head there, watch the course, and you will benefit. Don't worry, it's free, by the way. I'll see you in that next video.